don't work with robots. You work with people, and those people need to, some days they're going to show up and they're not going to be their best selves. Yeah. And if you've been paying attention, then when they're not showing up as their best selves, then you get to understand, hey, what's going on? Yeah. And you help to shape the environment and provide the environment that they can do their best in. Yeah. And really, I think at the end of the day, that's what leadership is all about. It's not about being the chief answer giver. It's about setting the conditions and setting the environment so that the entire team can do everything they need to do. And then you kind of step back and help keep those conditions in the right space.
Welcome back to another episode of AEC Perspectives, the podcast by RS&H. Today, we are going to be talking about, you can pack so much into one word, and sometimes it feels like it's not adequate. And the word I'm thinking of today is leadership. Now, we have brought to you on a silver platter someone who epitomizes this word, and we're going to enjoy talking to our guest today. Let me lay this up for y'all so you know who we're talking to. We are speaking today to Scott Grainger. He is an Associate Vice President at RS&H. He attended the University of Portland, graduated in 1994 with a Bachelor of Science degree in Civil Engineering. After graduating, Scott was commissioned via the ROTC as a second lieutenant in the United States Air Force, where he served 30 years in the civil engineer career field and then retired as a colonel. I'm a little bit in awe already, so I hope you're feeling the same. Scott is a registered professional engineer in the state of California, a project management professional, and a fellow in the Society of American Military Engineers. He's also a member of the SAME, S-A-M-E, National Board of Direction as an elected director. That's a whole lot of resume there, but he's got personal aspects too, which we're going to get into. He likes running, hiking, and skiing, which is great. I only like running when chased, but we'll talk about that in a moment. He has a passion for the outdoors, married with 3 children, and he likes learning about cultures through travel. This isn't the dating game. This is the AEC Perspectives podcast. And Scott, I'm just really pleased to have you sitting across microphones from me. Welcome to the pod.
Hey, thanks, Rachel. I'm super excited to be here. And when I listen to the introduction, it's always a little bit like, that's not me. I don't know who that guy is. So I appreciate the introduction there, and, really excited to be here.
Me too. And I have to delve into this really quick, because anytime someone says they have a passion for the outdoors, let's talk about where we're actually talking from. Scott, I'm talking to you from Colorado, which is very well known for the outdoors. Whereabouts are you joining the podcast from?
So I'm in the Great Pacific Northwest. I'm in Vancouver, Washington. Ooh. So we get all 4 seasons here. Everyone, as far as everyone knows, it rains all the time here. So please don't move here. But it's really a fantastic place. Today, it's probably not as cold as it is where you're at, but we're still in the 20s, 25. So
yeah, I will let everybody know I had to go out and about for an errand this morning, and it was 4 degrees. So we're recording this in the winter seasons, but hopefully it's warmer wherever anybody's listening to this right now. Thanks for letting us know where you're from. And I laid up at the beginning of this podcast that the topic was going to be leadership. I think we've all listened to, watched, heard about, partaken of content that is about leadership. It feels like it's that holy grail, or maybe even the dangling carrot, if we need another metaphor. Like, we're all chasing it all the time. Like, I just want to be a better leader. And one reason I'm excited to have you on today is because I think we're going to really hear that you have your own leadership philosophy and also how you developed it. So this feels like, again, we're trying to cram a lot of meaning into small phrases and words, but I want to ask you about your leadership philosophy. Can you share with us, what is your philosophy when you think about leadership and approach leadership?
The first thing I want to start off with is one of my least favorite phrases around leadership. And that is, man, these are going to be our future leaders. And I think everyone is a leader in their own right. The concept of people being a future leader, more about something than I do. So you're a leader in that area, and you're leaders at different levels. I would say my philosophy revolves around relationships, service, and growth. So personally, I think those 3 things really epitomize, who I want to be, how I tend to be as a leader, and then what I try and instill with other people.
Well, and let's dig into those three things too. Like, well, what are the components you need? When we're talking about relationships, what does that mean to you to have like relationships with the people that you're leading?
So, I mean, there's nothing that we do by ourselves, or there's very little that we do that is by ourselves.
Mhm.
So, having a relationship, building those strong bonds, just how you started off this podcast, right? Where are you coming from? Tell me a little bit about yourself. Here's who this person is. It gives you an idea of where they're coming from. And being able to build those relationships and work with other people, you've got to know a little bit about them to help understand where they're at, where they might be today, and what might be going on in their life, and know how to interact with human beings.
I love that you brought that up too, because Scott, let's be honest, you and I just met each other. We don't have a whole lot of stuff established there, but I mean, right off the bat, we can establish some mutual respect. So just building those foundations for that relationship is really important, I would imagine.
Sure. And then I think you have to approach relationships, assuming positive intent, right?
Mm-hmm.
Assuming that everybody has, they're not trying to do harm or to do anything. That kind of starts with that foundation of integrity and trust. You've got to assume that people are acting in their best intentions, that they have integrity, and you start off with a level of trust so that you can carry that forward. And sometimes people will break that, but it's very rare that people are doing that on purpose.
Well, and that leads to one of the other aspects that you talked about having a leadership philosophy, and that was service. And I mean, look, we already mentioned you were actually in the service. You were in military service, which I think that might just be inherently assumed. Like, yes, of course, you understand what it means to serve people. But what if I'm not in the military? Or what would you say to somebody who hasn't been in the military, but that they need to be approaching their leadership with service? What does that mean to you?
We're not always out for ourselves. We shouldn't be out for ourselves. The more that we give, really, that tends to come back to us in spades.
Yeah.
So we're, as engineers, as problem solvers, as planners, we are doing things for other people. We're not engineering bridges for ourselves. We're not engineering these facilities for ourselves. We're doing it for other people.
Yeah.
And again, back to that relationships, understanding how those things are going to be used, or how this is going to change somebody's lives, how this is going to change whatever the function is that helps you to, again, provide that service and then serve others. When I approach leadership and approach pretty much any endeavor that way, it helps to strengthen that mutual trust and respect, but it also helps to get the best product or the best end result.
Well, I got to tell you, as somebody who does drive across bridges or walk across bridges or take escalators or elevators up into buildings and things like that.
But apparently not run across them, because you said earlier, you don't do that.
That's right. Yes, only when chased. But yeah, some of you might be listening to this right now or watching it right now, and you're literally like, I am walking up some stairs, and you're not thinking about the people who put that together. You're not thinking about the team that maybe had to get together from inception to actually constructing it. You're not thinking about that. But if you do, if you pause and think for a moment about what are the motivations, were these people not only doing this because, hey, they're trying to help me get from point A to point B safely, but they're also doing it together, having that attitude of service toward each other on the team. I don't know, that just gives me a little peace of mind as a person who does traverse bridges, walking or walk up steps and things like that, to know that if it originates from that motive of service, then that does make me feel a little bit better, not going to lie.
Most of what folks in the AEC profession do, again, people go and flip on the light switch. They expect the lights to come on, but no one thinks about everything that it takes to get that. And so that is the service that we provide, and we have a passion for doing that.
Yeah. Which again, I appreciate as a layperson who's just like, yes, people built all this around me and for me, and I'm very thankful. And lastly, sometimes it can feel like some leaders, they do not do this part, and that's the growth part. That maybe they feel like, I've arrived. I can't teach me anything else. I know everything I need to know. That doesn't appear to be your philosophy, which I appreciate. Can you talk to me a little bit about what does growth mean to you as a leader?
Yeah, so I think there's always something you can continue to be learning. There's over 15,000, books written on leadership. So no one's got the corner on this, but things continue to evolve.
Mm-hmm.
And if you look at the span of what leadership meant 2,000 years ago to 20 years ago to today, how do we continue to grow? And that's just in the leadership realm. There's all kinds of places to continue learning. So for me, that continuous growth is, as long as I am learning something new every day, it's a successful day. As long as I'm able, and I try to instill that in people that I interact with and work with. I love helping other people achieve their goals.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that ties back to that service, but really being able to help other people achieve what they want to do and further their, goals. And that goal may be in leadership. That goal may be in learning to be a better runner. So just let me know. We can chat.
I have a feeling by the end of this podcast, you're going to probably be like, Rachel, you need to be going running every day. This could turn into a whole nother podcast. But no, we're talking about leadership. And already, for anyone listening to this who's like, yes, give me some areas, some foundations I can be working on to be a better leader. We've hit those already through you emphasizing how it's relationships, it's service, it's growth. We've shared that a large part of your background is military service. And again, you're talking to somebody who does not have that. And many of our people listening, our listeners might not also have military service. Some might. So I'd love to dig into, we all arrive to our leadership philosophy through different pathways and experiences. Why don't you share with us, how does your military experience shape your leadership philosophy? What were the inputs there?
So we'll start with, I had no idea what I was getting into at the very beginning. I was looking for a way to help pay for college. I got an ROTC scholarship, and that was my way to help pay for school.
Yeah.
In return for that scholarship, I had to serve for 4 years. So I always describe myself as a 4-year failure. I planned on serving my 4 years and then getting out of the military, and then probably joining the AEC industry at that time. 30 years later, I realized I failed completely at that. And I stayed because I got to do really fun things with, more importantly, really awesome people.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have identified with my statement earlier of everyone is a leader right off the bat 30 years ago.
Yeah.
I would have thought, well, I got so much to learn and maybe I'll be a leader someday. But really, I think it's through those experiences I had. I've got friends and relationships that I built in my very first assignment that are still some of my best friends today.
Yeah.
And I could go to them and have gone to them for advice on everything from personal to professional growth. So
it's interesting. Like, I can think about, like, if we had a parallel universe where, what if you hadn't stayed for those 4 years and hadn't stuck with that military career and maybe gone into the private sector and separate from military? How would you guess? Since again, you didn't live in that parallel universe, you did stick with the military for 30 years. What would be your guess as to like how it might be a bit different that you did stick with the military and that's a different experience than somebody else who didn't or wouldn't?
That's a super hard question to answer because you are the sum of all of your experiences, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I would probably be more rigid in my thinking. And I say that because I had the same parent organization, but I moved 12 different times in those 30 years.
Wow.
Every 2 to 3 years moving. So you have to make some new friends. You've got some people that you may have known from before, but you're making new friends. You've got new challenges. Every time we moved, I had a slightly different job. So I started off doing project management, and then I did environmental planning and so on all throughout my different careers or different assignments. Yeah. So I think the biggest change is I would probably be less flexible and would be more set in the, this is the way it's been done here for the last 30 years.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. You were the new guy on the block multiple times throughout that career, and just having that adaptability had to have really impacted you.
It did. And I think I want to spend a second just talking about the families that end up doing that, because like you said, I was taken care of. It was expected that I knew my job. My spouse, they didn't know their job. My kids didn't know who their friends were going to be. That said, I think those military kids, as they move around, especially if they're moving to a military community, you're the new kid for about a week. And then someone else is the new kid.
Right.
And that teaches them to learn that welcoming and helps build those relationships because now they're the ones who were in their shoes a week ago.
That's super interesting, and I hadn't thought about that too. That just really bespeaks having to have that constant adaptability. And I would imagine too, really kind of probably made your leadership really have to develop itself because you had to be super intentional about approaching it, knowing that things were going to change pretty constantly in that way.
I think it helps in terms of being able to communicate too, because
Yeah.
your understanding of what normal is because you've been there for a little bit and you're constantly getting new people to come in the organization. So you have to continue to talk about this is who we are, this is how we are, this is our role, while at the same time be open to, oh, you've got a great idea. Let's try that, or tell me more about how that could work here. And I'd love to see how we can grow from that.
Well, this segues beautifully into the next thing we want to talk about too. So often people who are leaders are asked to mentor people, other people who are maybe in the same or similar kind of situation, profession, industry, what have you. And also, we often find that people who are strong leaders were mentored very successfully by people who had gone before them and knew and just infused into their life. So I would really love to know, how do you approach mentorship? And I'm gonna use this phrase that you mentioned earlier. Okay, maybe not future leaders, like the leaders coming, the ones who they're trying to
Growing.
develop their leadership. Yes, they're growing leaders. There you go. How do you approach mentorship and helping grow those leaders?
So I think that mentorship is one of those, kind of like leadership. It's one of those words that is just packed full of
Yeah.
mystique, right? Oh, I'm going to get mentored. Yeesh. Is that good or bad? And it has happened both intentionally as well as just organically throughout my career for me. And I try to do the same with other people. So sometimes you're assigned hey, we'd like you to help this person in their next role. And that's one of those intentional development roles.
Yeah.
As I try and approach any of those mentoring relationships, it's, what do you want to get out of this? I am not here to fill your cup with me. I am here to understand what you want to get and then hear what your thoughts about how you're going to get there, or help you chart your path to get there, or tell you, maybe provide you some of my experiences so that you can, again, develop this. Because if you're not invested in how you're growing, then you're not going to grow. And I can't just tell you, well, here's the formula, because there is no formula.
You're not creating a clone of yourself. Yeah, because I think that's really poignant what you said. We're all leaders. If we interact with literally anybody around us, we have the capacity and ability to lead. But you're really emphasizing the importance of saying, maybe use the 2 ears instead of the one mouth more as you're getting
100%.
kicked off with that relationship, right?
Yeah, because again, if you approach a relationship where you come in and say, all right, so here's all the things you need to do this thing, like, I don't even want to do that thing. Oh, all right, well, then our work is done here.
Yeah.
And you can't, you just got to understand where people want to go. I would always talk with my officers about career planning and what is it that will be a success? What is it you want to do, or what is it you want to be? And you would often get I want to be a colonel. Okay, or a specific rank.
Yeah.
And the question is, why do you want to be that? What is it you want to do that you think that rank requires you to do?
Mm-hmm.
Like, oh, well, let me think about that. And you're just understanding, helping them get to what is it they really want to do, and then help them, oh, you only need to be a captain to be able to do that thing, or whatever it might be. So let's talk about that.
Is there a mentoring relationship you've had, like, that you can think of? Like, what's your longest one that you've conducted with somebody?
Where I have been a mentor for somebody, I would say it's probably been for my entire career, right? So, and it's a two-way mentoring relationship. So again, those relationships I built with some of my friends that we started at our first assignment, we learned a lot together. So it was not what one would consider a formal mentoring relationship, right? It was we're growing together and then bouncing things back and forth throughout our entire careers. And at some point they diverged where he got out and I'm still serving. but still able to, communicate back and forth.
Yeah. And the importance of what you mentioned, this doesn't have to be a formal thing. You guys don't have to have like, oh, let's write a contract where I'm the mentee, you're the mentor, and I think a lot of us have either seen that or even been part of it where it's like, okay, we write that we're going to meet 30 minutes or 60 minutes a week. You've brought up and emphasized there can be that casual, informal mentorship that happens as well. It feels like mentorship is kind of just part of any functional relationship, right?
Oh, right. So, it doesn't have to be this big, mystical, difficult, formal thing. It can be just an organic back and forth. I think both parties have to be open to it and have to be willing to learn from it. But at the same time, if you've got a relationship with somebody and hey, I've got this question, what do you think? That's mentoring.
Yeah.
At least in my mind, it's mentoring and helping somebody to grow.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've really covered a lot of ground as far as like, the things that you've done in your career from a leadership standpoint, from mentorship standpoint, kind of how you've arrived at those places and philosophies, particularly through your military service, and a lot of great concepts. Let's talk about when things aren't that great. So there are great leaders, there are good leaders, and then there's it's not the best leadership, not the greatest situation, just to be kind about it. What are some pitfalls or mistakes or errors in leadership that you think that you've seen out there that you're like, please avoid these at all cost?
So I think there's a couple of them. One is, and I've fallen prey to this, and I'm a problem solver, right? Someone comes to you with a question. All right, I'm going to solve your problem for you. Mm-hmm. And wanting to jump right in and give them the answer. That typically doesn't go so well.
Yeah.
And in the home life, sometimes I'll get hey, I've got this thing going on. Or, here's how I would solve that. It's like, no, I just want you to listen right now.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, got it. But it's not listening to understand. It's listening so that you can provide a response.
Yeah.
And I think people fail most often in just not taking the time to listen and understand what's going on and just being there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. Been there, done that too. Sometimes I get into my fix it mode. And I think too, I know we're both parents and not everybody who's watching or listening to this podcast might be, but that's a great example. You do have to really learn that new balance of like, okay, but I'm not going to just step in and fix this for you because you really need to figure this out for yourself or learn it and just provide that. You've mentioned this a few times in our discussion. Is you're listening to understand, or what I guess people might call that active listening too, really trying to assess and prioritize, I guess, what that other person needs to get out of the conversation versus just what you want to get out of it.
Right. So, that involves, at least to me, asking a lot of questions.
Yeah.
And they're not the yes, no questions. They're all right, why do we want to do that? What is it that you're trying to achieve here? What does success look like to you? Or what does success in this situation look like? So you can then better understand how to help. All right, so how do you think you'll get there?
Yeah.
Have you thought about this? Have you thought about these things, but not saying, oh, we'll do this and all will be good? Because let's face it, nothing is that straightforward, or very few things are that straightforward.
Exactly. I want to kind of circle this question then back to you because and I think the way you answer this is probably going to help a lot of people out there who are like saying, okay, Scott, yes, I'm a leadership position. It's so easy to get burnt out because there's a lot that you're trying to do to be a good leader. Let me ask you this then, and it's kind of in line of the main question we're asking right here for this part of the pod, but do you see leaders making mistakes where maybe they're burning themselves out a little bit? Like maybe they're focused so much on one area of their life and they're missing out on another. And is that jeopardizing their ability to be a good leader?
Guilty. Yes. The answer is yes. And trying to maintain balance in your life across all aspects. And we've probably all been there where I know I have been in a situation where I was not in balance. So I try and maintain balance physically, emotionally, spiritually, and mentally.
Yeah.
And all of those words, again, packed with different things for different people. But if any one of those areas in your life gets out of alignment, then you're not going to be as stable. I look at them like legs of a stool, right? If you are not paying attention to your physical health, you're going to be a little wobbly. If you're not paying attention to your emotional well-being, again, you're not going to be your best self.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean that you're going to have the most perfectly honed stool that is always on 4 solid feet, but it does mean that you want to try and maintain some balance in your life.
Absolutely. Gosh. And that, look, y'all, I think we just got a life lesson there too, because that's not just about being a good leader. That's about being a functional human. I mean,
You lead humans and you work with humans. You
Yeah.
don't work with robots. You work with people, and those people need to, some days they're going to show up and they're not going to be their best selves.
Yeah.
And if you've been paying attention, then when they're not showing up as their best selves, then you get to understand, hey, what's going on?
Yeah.
And you help to shape the environment and provide the environment that they can do their best in.
Yeah.
And really, I think at the end of the day, that's what leadership is all about. It's not about being the chief answer giver. It's about setting the conditions and setting the environment so that the entire team can do everything they need to do. And then you kind of step back and help keep those conditions in the right space.
Well, I love the way this conversation is going, because literally every question I move to next is a perfect segue from what we were just talking about, because this final rapid fire question, I want to ask you about RS&H's brand essence, driven to care, which I feel like has a lot to do with what we were just talking about and what really has been the kind of through line here. But what does that phrase, driven to care, mean to you?
We started off talking about relationships, and then having that foundation of integrity, trust, caring, all of that creativity, forward thinking, and in RS&H being an owner even, all of those things come together so that we can provide the best product, so that we can provide the best service really in our industry. And I think that I love the fact that we are focused on caring, because if we care about the people, the products, the places that we work in, then we're going to be happier. If we're happier, we're going to be able to show up in a better place and then provide that service.
Scott, it's been an awesome conversation. Any other lasting thoughts that you want to leave with our podcast watchers and listeners as they're thinking about leadership?
As you're walking across a bridge or up a set of stairs, I would say, think about the people that, had a part in all aspects of that. So I always go back to a leadership quote, or a quote that, is attributed to Colin Powell. He was having a conversation when he was in the Pentagon and, talking to the janitor there. And in that conversation, he was asking what his job is. And that janitor took the approach of saying, hey, I help foster national defense. And I'm paraphrasing, but I don't clean the floors. I am helping foster national defense. And just all of the people who were involved in helping build our infrastructure, take care of our infrastructure, they are serving society in a much greater role. And I love the fact that I get the opportunity to do that. I mean, that's part of what drives me is that service.
Yeah. Well, excellent note to land on there. Scott, thank you so much for your insights today. This has been wonderful.
Rachel, thanks. I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to come on and chat with you today.
Thank you. Yeah. And for everyone listening, watching, thank you for checking out yet another episode of AEC Perspectives. And we'll be back again with some more awesome insights for your career, your life, your leadership, and just things that you can think about while you're crossing that next bridge. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.